There's, I suppose I've got some good news and some bad news to report regarding some HD research that I'm involved in or hoping to be involved in. You may have heard over the last week that the first gene silencing clinical trial for Huntington's disease is starting now. It's the initial phase 1 of the clinical trial. So that's a kind of safety testing. It involves using an agent to silence the Huntington gene using these cerebral spinal fluid as a vector for getting the drug to the brain, where it turns off the production of the Huntington protein, which primarily turning off the toxic form of the Huntington, or lowering the amount of the toxic form of the Huntington protein in HD patients. So it's kind of turning off the source of damage at this, turning off the toxic damaging agent at source. Very promising, extremely promising. The most promising avenue, I think, at the minute, that's from a therapeutics perspective. Remember that there are currently no therapies that work on that alleviate the Huntington disease. The only therapies available at the minute are for treating symptoms. That particular trial I was hoping to be involved in. I still am hoping to be involved in, but unfortunately I don't meet the exclusion criteria for the initial phase, because that phase 1, it's a very small group of people. They're just testing the compound in to see if it's safe. So anyway, part of those exclusion criteria, they needed people that were very, very early days, very, very early in the HD progression. And unfortunately, I was just too far across that boundary. So my HD symptoms are just a little too bad, as bad grammar. So if you understand what I was just a little bit too far down the HD progression, that I'm a bit too poorly for the initial phase 1 trial. But there's every reason to hope that I would be, that those exclusion criteria will be a sort of a little broader when it comes to the next phase of the trial, the phase 2, or specifically phase 2B. That's when they've gone beyond testing for safety, and they're also testing for efficacy. That's the effectiveness of the treatment in HD patients. So there's a bigger pool of people that are treated, and obviously people with more advanced symptoms than the original process, the original phase 1 and phase 2A. So there's that phase that'll start in about a year's time, and that itself will run through to 2017. And the phase 3, if that goes well, the phase 3 of that trial will again be a much broader group of people and really be testing again on the efficacy of that treatment, and that will probably run through till 2018. A clinical trial that goes from phase 1, a start of phase 1 to the end of phase 3, if everything is successful, tends to take about 5 years. So you get kind of the idea. So basically, unfortunately, I was a bit disappointed. I found out a few days ago that I'm not eligible for that phase 1, but I'm not at death's door yet. But I'm just a little bit too far progressed that I've ruled myself out. trial. And in fact, apparently the criteria was so sensitive that people with HD who had in the early stages, who had fit in those early stages of the criteria 6 months ago, would probably, which I was, have progressed over the last 6 months to push themselves out of that very small boundary that is a little bit too far gone. So so them's are the breaks. There's not much I can do about it. And my name's still down, as it was, unofficially, to be involved. So hopefully, I'm one of the people considered for for phase 2B and phase 3, if all goes well. But that does mean I'm not doing that now for the next 12 months. But on the positive side, on the plus side, what that does make me do, I am now available for other clinical trials. And for that reason, there is another clinical trial that's recruiting at the minute. That's running at the minute. It's a 12 months trial, and it's a study called Legato, or Legato HD, which is looking at the efficacy and safety of a substance called laquinimod in HD patients. Now, this is a substance that will act on the brain's immune system. There are these cells called microglia that provide immune functionality in the brain and protecting, and have essentially a neuroprotective effect around the neurons within the brain. So this substance, the good news is that the drug has been used itself successfully in clinical trials on humans for other neurodegenerative conditions such as multiple sclerosis. I think it was found to not be effective for MS, but it was found to be safe in humans, which is shortcut the process that this needs to go through in that initial testing for safety, because it already has been tested for safety in humans. So that core stuff doesn't need to be done anymore. So they can jump straight to the trial where they're testing for the efficacy, which is so. I hope I'm signed up for that trial. I've done the initial pre-screening, so I've not been excluded in that study through that initial filtering process. So what we have next is Marie and I are involved. Marie's a control, and sort of as my caregiver, she can help provide information about her perspective, from her point of view, about my symptoms. So Marie and I are involved in that study, and we've got the formal screening process session tomorrow. So we'll go into the HD clinic tomorrow, not staying over or anything, but just going in for that initial, for a few hours to go through that formal screening process. So fingers crossed, it looks very positive. It looks very, very likely that I'll be involved in the Legato clinical trial. I might still get ruled out of that screening process. That's what the screening process is for. But yeah, it's looking like I would be applicable for this study. So yeah, the good thing is it runs for 12 months, and it's testing for the efficacy. It would start straight away. Essentially, the process. It's and the laquinimod that they're testing. They'll be testing for, as I say, for testing for the efficacy, how effective that is. It's hoped that it will slow the progression of HD, because it will reduce the inflammation in the brain, and there's inflammation in the brain. There is evidence to suggest that the inflammation in the brain might be causing harm in HD patients. So that's good. So yeah, so it might be something that actually slows the HD progression, and I'll be taking that part of their study for the next 12 months, and that's great. Yeah, so if first of all, if all goes well on that study, I'll be taking findings. I'll be taking something that's might slow the progression, which will be great. Obviously, that's something I'm really keen on. It might help some of my motor symptoms, and the primary outcome, I think, is motor symptoms that they're looking at. It's something they call the total motor score. Is a way, the process they use to evaluate neurological motor capability. I suppose that's a primary one. But the secondary outcomes is sort of some of the cognitive abilities. So it might not. I don't know. I mean, we'll see. But there might not be as much of an improvement on the cognitive side potentially as the potential improvement on the physical motor symptoms. But I have both physical and cognitive problems. So any help with any of those would be helpful. Would be good. Would be a bonus. But it also finishes in time for. If as I say, if all goes well on the other study, the gene silencing study, and people's heads don't explode when they take it, so that's all, and that's all positive. Phase 2B starts on that. Hopefully, I would come out of the Legato study in time to take part in the gene silencing study, if I'm able to. So yeah, if kind of makes sense. So first of all, disappointed I'm not on the gene silencing trial. That's probably the sexiest one study at the minute. But I'm on another very positive, very great study run by the same research team that I see for all the other studies, and the same research team that's running both Legato and the gene silencing study. So it's all good really, and I'll do one and the other. So basically, it was really good to. So positives and negatives. So there we go.